couldn't sleep again, or just pretending to learn something while slowly passing out. Either way, welcome. How was your day? And where in the world are you watching from tonight? Let us know in the comments. Drop your location and the current time. It's always fun to see who's falling asleep in what corner of the planet. This is Boring Mysteries, where we gently unwrap the world's biggest untold secrets without rushing, without drama, and without any pressure to stay awake. The visuals are here if your eyes are still open, but if they're not, that's totally fine. Just lie back, relax, and let the forgotten mysteries of the past do the rest. Tonight, we are diving deep into the secrets of who actually built the pyramids. Is there any cover-up to this greatest ancient history or mystery of humanity? Let's dive right in. They rise from the desert like questions carved in stone. Monuments so vast, so precise, so enduring that even after 4,500 years, we still don't truly understand how they came to be. Who built them? When? And why? You've heard the official story, but what if the truth is far more complex, far more ancient, and far more guarded than you were ever told? This isn't just a story about ancient stones. This is a story about what they were hiding and who still doesn't want you to know. Chapter 1. The official story. Let's begin with what we're all taught. According to modern Egyptology, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2560 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops. It's the tallest and oldest of the three pyramids at Giza and once stood at 481 feet, the tallest man-made structure in the world for nearly 4,000 years. The story goes like this. Tens of thousands of workers, mostly farmers conscripted during the Nile's flood season, toiled under the desert sun. Over 2 decades, they hauled 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, each weighing between 2 and 80 tons, from distant quarries, stacked them with extraordinary precision, and aligned the entire structure with the cardinal points of the earth. Archaeologists argue this was possible due to a highly organized labor force, innovative engineering techniques, and unlimited state resources under a divine monarchy. There is some evidence to support this theory. The discovery of workers' villages near the pyramids, including bread ovens, fish bones, and sleeping quarters, suggests a well-fed, organized workforce, not slaves as often depicted. Ancient graffiti found in hidden chambers names work gangs like the Drunkards of Menkor, indicating camaraderie and national pride. Copper chisels, remnants of ramps, and sled tracks have all been found, reinforcing the idea of human-powered construction. It's an incredible testament to ancient Egyptian planning and power. These were not just tombs. They were cosmic machines aligning the dead king with the afterlife. And yet, for all its polish, the official story has cracks. Cracks that only widen the deeper you look. Consider this. If 2.3 million blocks were placed over 20 years, that's 115,000 blocks a year, nearly 315 blocks every single day without fail. That's 1 block every 2 minutes, for 2 decades, with tools no more advanced than copper and wood. No modern engineer would attempt this feat without heavy machinery. And yet we're told desert laborers with primitive tools did it perfectly, not once but repeatedly, across dynasties. Why is there no record, not a single hieroglyph, depicting the actual construction of the Great Pyramid? Why are there no blueprints, no instructions, no royal decrees? For a civilization obsessed with documenting their every act, the silence is deafening. The more you dig, the stranger it gets. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree. It encodes the dimensions of the Earth, the ratio of pi, the golden mean. Not just architectural brilliance, but mathematical genius. Were Bronze Age farmers really calculating planetary geometry with stone tools? Or are we missing something much bigger? Some of the internal stones weigh over 50 tons. The king's chamber is made of granite blocks transported from Aswan, 500 miles away. Today, it would take a convoy of specialized trucks and cranes to move them, if we could do it at all. Yet someone, somehow, did it. 4,500 years ago. Or did they? Maybe the biggest question isn't how the pyramids were built, but when. Could they be older than Khufu? Could his dynasty have merely inherited them? Some ancient texts say Egypt was ruled by gods and demigods long before the pharaohs. Herodotus, the father of history, claimed that 341 generations of kings ruled before Menes, the first pharaoh. But modern Egyptology dismisses these accounts as myth. Any theory that challenges the 4,500-year timeline is ridiculed, censored, or worse, professionally blacklisted. Why? Who decides what version of history gets carved in stone, and which truths must remain buried? If the pyramid builders were ordinary humans using primitive tools, then we are left with a contradiction. The greatest feat of architecture in the ancient world was achieved at the beginning of a civilization, not at its peak. This defies all logic. No other civilization has ever started with its most complex construction. Technology, skill, and knowledge are supposed to grow over time, not appear fully formed out of nowhere. So we are left with questions, deep, uncomfortable questions. Was there a forgotten chapter of human history, one where knowledge and skills we no longer understand were once common? Could there have been an advanced civilization long before ancient Egypt, whose knowledge was inherited, misunderstood, and eventually lost? Or could the Great Pyramid be older than we think? Not 4,500 years old, but 10,000, 15,000, even more? Dating the stones themselves is nearly impossible. Stone cannot be carbon dated. The only dating we rely on comes from nearby organic material or graffiti inside hidden chambers attributed to Khufu. But what if those marks were added later? What if the pyramids were already ancient in Khufu's time? We are looking at a monument that challenges the official story of human history, a feat so advanced it almost forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. And this is only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Impossible Feat. The pyramids of Egypt are not just ancient monuments. They are puzzles built with such precision, scale, and mystery that even today's most advanced engineers struggle to explain them. The deeper one investigates, the more one confronts a startling possibility. These structures may not just be difficult to replicate, they might be outright impossible, using the technology attributed to ancient Egyptians. The Great Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Pyramid of Khufu, is estimated to contain over 2.3 million stone blocks. Each block weighs anywhere between 2 to 80 tons. That's over 6 million tons of stone, moved, carved, lifted, and placed with a precision that rivals modern laser measurements. The pyramid is aligned to true north with less than 0.05 degrees of deviation, more precise than most modern buildings. What makes this even more baffling is that we are told the builders did this without wheels, pulleys, iron tools, or any machinery. Just copper chisels, wooden sleds, and brute human strength. Let that sink in. Imagine lifting and placing a 70-ton stone slab in the perfect position, without a crane, without steel, and without margin for error. Not once, but thousands of times. No evidence of internal ramps has been found. No written manuals, no detailed plans, not even a trial and error pyramid. Just perfect execution, as if the builders already knew exactly what they were doing. The granite blocks used inside the king's chamber were quarried in Aswan, nearly 500 miles away. Transporting granite that distance in the modern day would require massive diesel-powered machinery, careful logistics, and months of planning. We're told the ancient Egyptians floated these blocks down the Nile and then somehow hauled them across the desert to the pyramid's core. Yet there's no detailed explanation of how they lifted and maneuvered these colossal stones into such tight internal spaces. Then there's the issue of precision. The joints between the stones are so tight that not even a razor blade can fit between them. Modern engineers have measured the flatness of the pyramid's base platform, and the deviation is only a fraction of an inch across the entire structure. That kind of precision isn't necessary for a tomb. It suggests something else, something that required absolute mathematical perfection. The internal shafts of the Great Pyramid, long assumed to be ventilation systems, were recently found to align almost perfectly with specific stars in Orion's belt and Sirius as they appeared thousands of years ago. These alignments suggest the builders had astronomical knowledge of the heavens, accurate over millennia, and understood precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that alters the position of stars over thousands of years. Precession was not officially discovered by modern science until the time of Hipparchus in the 2nd century BCE. And yet, somehow, the layout of the Giza pyramids mirrors the alignment of Orion's belt around 10,500 BCE. That date is thousands of years before the first dynasty of Egypt. According to mainstream historians, human civilization at that time was limited to small tribes and primitive agriculture. No writing, no cities, no advanced architecture. So how did the builders of the Great Pyramid know the exact positions of these stars at that remote time? And why would they align their greatest monument to it? Then there's the scale. The Great Pyramid covers 13 acres of land. Each side is almost 755 feet long. Its height once stood at 481 feet. The 4 sides are perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The deviation is so small it's almost unmeasurable. Today, aligning something on that scale would require GPS and satellite imagery. Ancient Egyptians, according to the traditional timeline, didn't even have compasses. The Great Pyramid is also not just aligned to Earth, it encodes its measurements. The base perimeter, divided by the pyramid's height, gives a close approximation of 2 pi. the mathematical constant pi. The pyramid also appears to incorporate the golden ratio, the speed of light in meters per second, and even the circumference of the Earth. How could a civilization without access to modern tools or mathematics embed these constants into a structure made entirely of stone? Skeptics argue these are coincidences, but at what point do coincidences pile so high that they become impossible to ignore? No wooden tools or copper chisels found have been shown to be capable of cutting granite. Experiments attempting to replicate these cuts using reconstructed ancient tools have mostly failed. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. Even with modern diamond-tipped saws, shaping it is slow and labor-intensive. Yet the builders of the pyramids cut and shaped hundreds of granite blocks with apparent ease. How? And then there's the mortar. The mortar used between the blocks of the Great Pyramid is stronger than the limestone itself. Scientists have analyzed it, but cannot replicate its exact composition. It seems to be a synthetic compound, not a naturally occurring one. And yet, there's no evidence that the ancient Egyptians had knowledge of synthetic chemistry on this level. Moving on, the logistics of the construction are equally mind-boggling. If the pyramids were built in 20 years, that means a block had to be quarried, transported, lifted, and placed every 2 minutes for 2 decades straight. No holidays, no delays, no accidents. And this doesn't even include time for site leveling, casing stones, and internal passage construction. Even with today's most advanced technology, replicating the Great Pyramid would be a massive undertaking. Engineers at NOVA and the BBC have tried to reconstruct scaled-down versions of the pyramid using ancient methods. Most of these attempts either failed or required heavy modern intervention to succeed. The conclusion was simple. This is not something we could easily do today. And yet, we're told it was routine work for Bronze Age laborers with no machines. Nowhere in ancient Egyptian writings do we find detailed descriptions of pyramid construction. Not in the temples, not in the tombs, not on the walls. And that in itself is strange. The Egyptians documented everything. Births, harvests, wars, recipes. But they said almost nothing about the building of the most iconic structures in their entire civilization. Why? There are also pyramids in Egypt that clearly show signs of lesser skill. The Bent Pyramid and the Pyramid of Meidum, for instance, show major design flaws, suggesting learning curves and mistakes. Yet the Great Pyramid stands flawless, as if it was the result not of trial and error, but of inherited perfection. It's as though someone found the blueprint and executed it with knowledge far beyond what we attribute to the time. All of this leads to an unsettling conclusion. Either the timeline is wrong, the capabilities of the civilization are misunderstood, or someone or something else was involved. Mainstream historians say there is no mystery. That's what makes it even more mysterious. The insistence that all the evidence points to ordinary explanations in the face of extraordinary facts seems at best intellectually lazy and at worst deliberate suppression. If the pyramid builders were ordinary humans using primitive tools, then we are left with a contradiction. The greatest feat of architecture in the ancient world was achieved at the beginning of a civilization, not at its peak. This defies all logic. No other civilization has ever started with its most complex construction. Technology, skill, and knowledge are supposed to grow over time, not appear fully formed out of nowhere. So we are left with questions. deep, uncomfortable questions. Was there a forgotten chapter of human history, one where knowledge and skills we no longer understand were once common? Could there have been an advanced civilization long before ancient Egypt, whose knowledge was inherited, misunderstood, and eventually lost? Or could the Great Pyramid be older than we think? Not 4,500 years old, but 10,000, 15,000, even more? Dating the stones themselves is nearly impossible. Stone cannot be carbon dated. The only dating we rely on comes from nearby organic material or graffiti inside hidden chambers attributed to Khufu. But what if those marks were added later? What if the pyramids were already ancient in Khufu's time? We are looking at a monument that challenges the official story of human history, a feat so advanced it almost forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. And this is only the beginning. Chapter 3: Hidden Clues and Forbidden Theories. The further we investigate the pyramids, the more we find strange, unexplained, and sometimes deliberately ignored pieces of evidence scattered across Egypt and beyond. These are the fragments of a forgotten puzzle, a puzzle that may never be officially solved because the moment you try to ask the wrong questions, you are told to stop asking. In plain sight and deep underground, there are clues that suggest an entirely different story. One where ancient Egypt may not have been the birthplace of this knowledge, but the inheritor. A story where powerful truths were hidden, edited, or buried because they didn't fit the neat, linear version of human progress we were taught to believe. Start with the Sphinx. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands guard beside the pyramids, a monolithic statue carved from a single block of limestone. Egyptologists date it to around 2500 BCE, supposedly commissioned by Pharaoh Khafre. But if you look closer, if you really look, you'll see signs of erosion on the Sphinx that don't make sense. Geologists, including Dr. Robert Schoch, have argued that the vertical weathering on the Sphinx could only have been caused by prolonged heavy rainfall, but there hasn't been significant rainfall on the Giza Plateau for over 7,000 years. That means the Sphinx, or at least the base upon which it was carved, could be much older, possibly more than 10,000 years old. This theory caused an uproar when it was presented, not because the science was wrong, but because of what it implied, that advanced monumental sculpture existed long before the rise of dynastic Egypt. If true, it would completely rewrite the timeline of human civilization. The academic world guards the conventional timeline closely, and anyone who questions it is often ridiculed or ignored. Careers have been destroyed for suggesting that ancient humans were more advanced than we believe. The resistance to alternative theories is not just about preserving facts, it's about preserving a worldview, a narrative of progress that places modern civilization at the peak of human development. To admit that someone in the distant past might have been our equal or superior would undermine centuries of scientific, political, and cultural assumptions. Yet forbidden theories persist. One of the most popular is that the pyramids were not tombs at all, but power generators. The Great Pyramid in particular has internal features that don't match any other Egyptian tomb. There are no hieroglyphs inside, no elaborate decorations, no mummies were ever found inside it, just a series of shafts, chambers, and mysterious empty spaces. Some researchers believe these features suggest that the pyramid was not a burial site, but an ancient energy device, possibly using vibration, resonance, and natural earth frequencies. They point to the materials used: limestone to insulate, granite to conduct, and the placement of the pyramid atop intersecting energy lines on the Earth's surface. The idea sounds like science fiction until you realize we still don't know exactly how the pyramid was supposed to function as a tomb. We assume it was because that's what fits the narrative. But what if it wasn't a tomb at all? What if it was something entirely different, built with knowledge we've lost? There are also oral traditions passed down through generations, stories that speak of civilizations that came before, of great floods that wiped out the world, of survivors who carried knowledge across the earth to rebuild. These stories appear in cultures far removed from Egypt, Sumerian, Mayan, Hindu, even Native American. They all speak of a time before the known history, a time of gods, giants, and forgotten technology. Mainstream historians label these stories as myth, but myth has a strange way of preserving truth beneath symbolism. What if these myths are memories, encoded in story, of something real? There are ancient maps, like the Piri Reis map, that show parts of the world in detail that should not have been known. Antarctica without ice, coastlines accurately drawn centuries before satellite mapping. The only explanation is that these maps were copies of copies, handed down from a source civilization with global knowledge. Is it possible that the knowledge to build the pyramids came from that source? A pre-Diluvian culture that vanished but left behind a legacy in stone? Another forbidden theory is that the pyramids were built by humans alone. Some suggest extraterrestrial involvement, visitors from the stars, mistaken for gods by early humans who passed on the knowledge of the heavens, mathematics, and construction. The idea is often mocked, but consider this. Nearly every ancient culture speaks of beings from the sky, not in vague spiritual terms, but with startling physical detail: flying chariots, beings of light, metallic ships. The Dogon tribe in Mali knew about Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, long before modern telescopes confirmed its existence. They said they learned it from their gods, the Nomo, amphibious beings who came from the sky. Could the same influence have reached ancient Egypt? Whether you accept these theories or not, one thing is clear: the conventional story of the pyramids does not account for the full body of evidence. It cannot explain the erosion patterns, the precision cuts, the unexplained objects, or the global connections. There are too many questions, too many anomalies, too many threads that, when followed, lead not to answers, but to more mystery. And that raises the most dangerous question of all. If this evidence exists, and it does, then why is it not part of the official story? Why is it ignored, hidden, or discredited? Could it be that the truth threatens more than just archaeology? Could it threaten our understanding of who we are, where we came from, and what we are capable of? And if so, who is hiding it? Chapter 4: Alternative Builders. The Great Pyramid is unlike any other structure on Earth. It is not merely the product of intelligent design. It is a challenge to everything we think we know about human history. And as more evidence surfaces and more questions remain unanswered, one possibility grows harder to ignore. Maybe the builders weren't who we've always been told they were. Mainstream historians credit the ancient Egyptians with building the pyramids during the 4th dynasty, but this explanation comes with gaps that cannot be closed by copper tools and manpower alone. The moment you confront these gaps honestly, new theories emerge, radical theories that propose the builders were someone else entirely. Some believe that a forgotten civilization existed before Egypt, a civilization wiped from the historical record, either by natural disaster, war, or deliberate erasure. This idea isn't just based on speculation, it's built on clues scattered across the ancient world. Consider Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Dated to around 11,600 years ago, this site consists of massive stone pillars arranged in circles with intricate carvings of animals and symbols. The stones are so large and so precisely placed that they rival, in complexity and mystery, the great monuments of Egypt. And yet, Göbekli Tepe predates writing, agriculture, and organized civilization as we know it. Who built it? How did they do it? And more importantly, why did they bury it under tons of earth, as if trying to preserve or protect it? If such a structure could be built over 11,000 years ago, before Egypt's first dynasty, then the idea of a lost, advanced civilization is no longer fantasy. It becomes a question of where else they may have left their mark, and whether the pyramids are the greatest surviving trace of their knowledge. Another theory suggests that survivors of a global cataclysm, possibly the end of the last ice age, spread their knowledge across the world. These were not gods in the supernatural sense, but godlike in their mastery of geometry, astronomy, and engineering. They became the mythic figures in the stories of Atlantis, the Apkallu of Mesopotamia, the civilizing gods of Mesoamerica, and the Neteru of Egypt. If the pyramids were inherited by the ancient Egyptians rather than built from scratch, this would explain why the earliest pyramids, like the Great Pyramid, are the most advanced, while later ones decline in quality and size. The Egyptians may have built in the style of the pyramids they found, but never matched their perfection because they lacked the original knowledge. Another controversial theory points to the concept of ancient giants. In texts from Sumer, India, the Bible, and even indigenous American legends, there are stories of beings who were larger and stronger than modern humans, beings with the strength and knowledge to move stones of impossible size. Most historians dismiss these stories as symbolic, but physical evidence of unusually large skeletal remains has been reported, though often discredited or quietly removed from public attention. There are accounts from early explorers, settlers, and even newspaper articles from the 19th and early 20th centuries describing the discovery of massive human skeletons across North America and other regions. These discoveries were often followed by a mysterious disappearance of the bones, and institutions like the Smithsonian were accused, without clear proof, of suppressing the evidence. If such giants ever existed, they could offer one explanation for how massive stones were moved and lifted with apparent ease. Yet another theory, perhaps the most controversial, is that the pyramid builders were not from Earth at all. The ancient alien hypothesis suggests that beings from another planet or dimension visited Earth in the distant past and either built the pyramids themselves or taught humans how to build them. This theory is often dismissed as science fiction, but its proponents argue that the level of technology implied by the pyramid's construction could match what we would expect from an advanced non-human intelligence. Throughout ancient Egypt, And in other civilizations, there are depictions of strange beings with elongated skulls, animal-human hybrids, and flying objects. While often interpreted symbolically or religiously, some researchers believe these are literal records, artistic attempts to portray real encounters with non-human entities. The Dorin tribe of Mali, for instance, possessed detailed knowledge of the star Sirius and its invisible companion, Sirius B, long before modern telescopes could have possibly revealed such information. They claimed this knowledge was given to them by beings who came from the stars. Could similar knowledge have influenced ancient Egypt? Some texts from antiquity describe Egypt being founded by the gods, who then handed over rule to demigods, and finally to human kings. The pharaoh, Menes, is said to have inherited rule from a line of beings who ruled for tens of thousands of years, longer than any human lifespan. Mainstream historians treat these records as mythology, but what if they are distorted memories of a very real past? Even more puzzling are structures across the globe that resemble the pyramids of Egypt. From the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica to the mound structures in China and the pyramidal forms in Indonesia, we see the same basic shape repeated across continents, often with astronomical alignments and similar construction techniques. Did these civilizations arrive at the same idea independently, or were they influenced by a common source? The idea of a global civilization, one that spanned the earth long before our recorded history, has long been dismissed as pseudoscience. But what if that civilization existed, and what we call ancient Egypt is only a fragment of its legacy? The legends of Atlantis speak of a powerful, technologically advanced empire that sank into the sea after a great disaster. Plato described it in detail, placing it beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. His story, passed down from Egyptian priests to Greek scholars, tells of a civilization with knowledge, wealth, and power that eclipsed all others. And when Atlantis fell, its survivors spread across the globe. Whether Atlantis was a real place, a metaphor, or a fusion of multiple cultures lost to history, the concept resonates because it explains the otherwise unexplainable. The sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in isolated civilizations and the monumental structures that remain long after their creators have vanished. Perhaps the pyramids of Egypt are the key, not a mystery in themselves, but a message from a lost world, one that hints at what once was and what may come again. If the Great Pyramid was not a tomb, but a machine, if the layout of Giza was not decoration, but a star map, if the builders were not peasants with chisels, but custodians of a forgotten science, then our entire understanding of history must be rewritten. And those who benefit from the current narrative, those who shape our textbooks and control our institutions, have every reason to resist that rewriting. Because when you challenge the origin of the pyramids, you don't just question one monument. You challenge the very foundation of what we believe about human history, human potential, and the path of our civilization. And once you start asking who really built the pyramids, you may find yourself staring into a past that looks nothing like the one you were taught. Chapter 5. The Cover-Up. The most enduring mysteries are not always buried in the past. Sometimes they are kept alive through silence. Not because no one knows the truth, but because too many people are invested in hiding it. For centuries, the pyramids of Egypt have drawn explorers, scholars, scientists, and mystics. Some came to marvel, others came to decode. But many, when confronted with the true depth of the mystery, simply walked away. Or worse, they rewrote what they couldn't explain. And this is where the real cover-up begins. The modern story of ancient Egypt was largely constructed during the colonial era. European powers, particularly France and Britain, poured into Egypt during the 18th and 19th centuries, extracting artifacts, tombs, and knowledge. Their interpretations, limited by their own cultural biases, became the foundation of what we now call Egyptology. But early accounts from Arab historians, local traditions, and even early Western travelers told very different stories. One such example is the work of the Arab historian al-Makrizi in the 15th century. He wrote that the pyramids were built long before the Great Flood by a king who wanted to preserve knowledge from a coming cataclysm. Inside the pyramids, according to his sources, were hidden star maps, secrets of geometry, and ancient technology. Knowledge passed down from the antediluvian world. These accounts were dismissed by Western archaeologists as folklore. But many of the details, including underground tunnels and sealed chambers, have been quietly confirmed by modern scans and expeditions. Why are these stories excluded from academic discourse? Why are alternative perspectives always marginalized? The control of history is power, and the history of Egypt, perhaps more than any other, has been carefully managed to reinforce a narrative of linear progress, that we, modern humans, are the peak of civilization, that nothing before us could rival our intelligence, organization, or technology. To admit otherwise would shatter that illusion. That's why evidence that contradicts the timeline is often ignored, mislabeled, or locked away. Artifacts that don't fit the narrative are dismissed as hoaxes. Skeptical researchers are denied funding, publication, and careers. Consider the story of Walter Emery, a respected Egyptologist who worked extensively at Saqqara. During his digs, he reportedly uncovered a sealed tomb that contained artifacts of unknown material. Objects that did not resemble anything else found in Egypt. According to private correspondences, the items were quickly removed and never displayed publicly. Emery died under unusual circumstances shortly thereafter. His official biography never mentions the artifacts again. There are dozens of such cases. Unexplained discoveries quietly removed from museums, photographs edited, publications blocked. The most famous example might be the inventory stela found near the Sphinx. This granite slab, dating from a much later period, describes repairs made to the Sphinx by Khufu, not its original construction. If taken at face value, it implies the Sphinx predates the 4th dynasty. Egyptologists argue that the stela is a later fabrication, created to give legitimacy to local temples. But if that were true, why would its creators bother inventing a story about Khufu repairing the Sphinx instead of building it? This pattern of dismissing, discrediting, and concealing repeats throughout the study of ancient Egypt. Take the infamous Tomb of Osiris, located deep beneath the Giza Plateau. In the 1990s, Egyptian archaeologist Dr. Zahi Hawass led a televised expedition into the shaft, descending 100 feet below the surface. What they found was a series of chambers filled with granite sarcophagi and a massive subterranean complex. But after the broadcast, no follow-up studies were made public, no peer-reviewed papers, no access for outside researchers. The site was sealed, and silence followed. Why? What was found down there that couldn't be explained? Or couldn't be allowed to become part of the mainstream story? Ground-penetrating radar scans have revealed vast cavities beneath the Sphinx and the pyramids. These anomalies suggest large, empty spaces, possibly chambers or tunnels. But when independent researchers have requested permission to excavate, the answer is always no. No reason, no transparency, just silence. Many of these restrictions are enforced by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. For decades, this council has held the final word on who can dig, what they can publish, and how they must interpret their findings. Critics argue that this control has stifled innovation and protected outdated theories from scrutiny. But it goes deeper than bureaucracy. The story of the pyramids affects more than just historians and archaeologists. It challenges religious narratives, cultural identities, and even geopolitical power. If the pyramids are proven to be tens of thousands of years old, or built by a forgotten civilization, then all the major timelines of science, religion, and human progress collapse. For those in power, maintaining the existing narrative is not just convenient, it's essential. And so the cover-up continues. It takes the form of ridicule. Researchers like Graham Hancock, Robert Bauval, and John Anthony West have spent decades challenging the official story. They have published books, presented evidence, and offered alternative timelines. But instead of engaging with their arguments, most mainstream scholars dismiss them outright as pseudo-historians or conspiracy theorists. This tactic works, not because their evidence is weak, but because the academic gatekeepers control the flow of information. Universities, journals, and museums are slow to embrace any theory that threatens the status quo. Yet the interest grows. More people around the world are asking uncomfortable questions. Why is the Sphinx so heavily eroded? Why are there pyramids on every continent? Why do ancient myths describe lost civilizations and sky gods with such consistency? And why, if the mainstream version is so airtight, are independent researchers not allowed to test it? Every attempt to examine these questions is met with the same response. You're wrong. You're not qualified. It's already been proven. But has it? The truth is, history is not a fixed script. It's a story told by those with the voice to tell it. And for too long, that voice has spoken with only one accent, from one podium, with one purpose: to preserve the illusion that we know everything worth knowing. But the stones say otherwise. The silence of the pyramid says otherwise. And the growing chorus of doubters is becoming too loud to ignore. What if the real cover-up is not a secret vault filled with forbidden artifacts? What if it's the assumption that there is nothing left to discover? What if the greatest crime was not hiding the truth, but convincing us never to look for it? Chapter 6. Lost Technology and the Power of Stone. The ancient world was not silent. It spoke in symbols, in stars, and in stone. And no structure speaks louder than the Great Pyramid of Giza. But what if we've been listening with the wrong ears? The official narrative tells us the pyramid is a tomb, a final resting place for a king who believed he would rise again in the afterlife. But everything about the structure defies that simplicity. There is no body, no inscriptions, no treasures, no evidence that the Great Pyramid ever held a pharaoh. What it does contain is geometry, advanced mathematics, resonance, and silence. Stone has a memory. It records forces and frequencies. The Great Pyramid, at its core, may not be a tomb at all, but a machine. Inside the pyramid are three main chambers: the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, and the so-called subterranean chamber, carved deep into the bedrock. Connecting these are narrow shafts, some pointing precisely at stars that held mythological and navigational significance in ancient Egypt. But those shafts are not for air. They're far too small to serve as ventilation. Instead, they appear to have been cut with specific angles, aligning with celestial bodies such as Orion's Belt and Sirius, stars long associated with Osiris and the Egyptian journey of the soul. The king's chamber is made of granite, a stone rich in quartz, a mineral known to generate electricity under pressure, a property known as piezoelectricity. Above the chamber are 5 enormous granite blocks forming the relieving chambers, each weighing over 70 tons. But their placement isn't merely structural. Some researchers believe these stones function like tuning forks, vibrating at certain frequencies, amplifying sound and energy within the pyramid. In other words, the pyramid might have been designed to resonate. What does it mean for a building to resonate? In modern physics, resonance is the amplification of a natural frequency through external vibration. We use this principle in everything from musical instruments to bridges and radio towers. What if the ancients understood this concept, not metaphorically, but literally? What if the pyramid was built to harness sound, energy, and vibration in ways we've only just begun to understand? In 1999, a team led by acoustic engineer Tom Danley studied the acoustics of the Great Pyramid. They found that sound waves generated in the Queen's chamber were transmitted through the structure and amplified in the King's chamber. Certain frequencies caused the granite blocks to hum, as if the pyramid itself were alive, responding. This was not accidental. It was engineered. The placement of the chambers, the materials used, the angle of the shafts, all seemed to support the idea that the pyramid was built to manipulate energy. But for what purpose? Some believe it was a type of power plant, one that used the Earth's natural vibrations, the water table beneath the plateau, and the conductive properties of granite to generate energy. Others think it was a healing center, a place where harmonic frequencies were used to balance the body and soul. Still, others suggest it was a portal, not in the science fiction sense, but a spiritual or energetic gateway built to mimic the soul's journey through the stars. Whatever the purpose, the technology implied is astonishing, and it's not just Egypt. In Peru, at Sacsayhuaman, we find walls made of multi-ton stones, carved and fitted together with such precision that not even a razor blade can slide between them. The stones have no mortar. They interlock like 3D puzzles, and some of them appear to have been softened or shaped in ways that defy explanation. The Incas themselves said they did not build these walls. They inherited them. In India, at the temple of Kailasa, an entire mountain was carved downward into an ornate temple complex, supposedly by hammer and chisel, over decades. Yet the symmetry, the scale, and the precision make that explanation feel inadequate, At Baalbek in Lebanon, the massive platform beneath the Roman temple includes stones weighing over 800 tons, the largest cut stones ever used in construction. We cannot move them today with modern cranes, but they were placed with millimeter precision thousands of years ago. What we are looking at across the world is not evidence of brute force, but finesse, knowledge, technology. Technology that may not have involved machines in the way we think of them, gears, engines, or electricity, but instead worked with natural forces, magnetism, vibration, sound, pressure, and geometry. There are legends and ancient texts that speak of sound being used to move stones. In Tibet, it was said that monks used horns and chants to levitate boulders. In Egypt, there were tales of sacred words that could move objects. To the modern mind, these are myths. But what if they are misunderstood accounts of real techniques? Even the word pyramid hints at function. Some suggest it comes from the Greek pyre, meaning fire, and mid, meaning middle. Fire in the middle. An energy center. Others point to its Egyptian name, Mur. Some scholars argue this translates loosely to place of ascension or instrument of ascension. Again, we see clues, not of death and burial, but of energy, transformation, and movement. The materials used also matter. Limestone, used on the outer casing, is a great insulator. Granite, used inside, is a conductor. If water from the Nile flowed underneath, as some researchers suggest, it could have created an electrostatic charge, or at the very least, interacted with the piezoelectric quartz. It begins to sound less like a tomb, and more like a battery or a circuit. And still, the mainstream explanation remains. Tombs for kings, built by slaves or loyal workers, constructed with copper tools, brute strength, and clever ramps. That version might comfort textbooks, but it no longer satisfies the curious mind. There is something missing. A gap between what we see and what we are told. And into that gap fall the whispers of lost civilizations. Maybe the pyramid isn't a monument to the dead, but a message to the future, a blueprint carved in stone. Not just of what once was, but of what can be again. A technology not lost, just misunderstood. And if that knowledge still exists, buried beneath the sand, locked in forgotten texts or hidden in plain sight, then the final chapter of this story has not yet been written, because a civilization that could build the pyramids may not be entirely gone. Chapter 7. Rewriting History. History is not just a record of what happened. It is a map of how we see ourselves. And when that map is wrong, the entire journey must be questioned. The pyramids of Egypt stand as the most enduring contradiction in the story of civilization. For centuries, they have been explained away as funerary architecture, symbolic, ceremonial, solved. But the stones themselves refuse to comply. They whisper truths that books will not print. They outlast every attempt to simplify them. And they remain silent, mathematical, and unmoved. If even a portion of what we've explored is true, if the pyramids are older than we think, more precise than we can replicate, more functional than symbolic, then the timeline of human history must be reevaluated from the ground up. And not just Egypt, all of it. Because if an advanced civilization existed before our recorded history, if knowledge was once widespread and later lost, then the linear model of progress collapses. We are no longer the pinnacle of human achievement. We are survivors of a forgotten age, rebuilding blindly atop the ruins of something greater. It would explain why so many cultures, Sumerian, Mayan, Egyptian, Vedic, describe golden ages followed by great catastrophes. It would explain the sudden appearance of agriculture, astronomy, writing, and architecture across multiple continents within a narrow window of time. It would explain why our myths all speak the same language: gods descending from the sky, floods that swallowed the earth, civilizations that fell from the stars to the soil. And it would explain the silence, the suppression, because to rewrite history is to redistribute power. The story of who we are and where we come from is the story that gives meaning to everything else. Control that, and you control how a species sees itself. But the cracks are widening, the discoveries are mounting, and the questions are no longer whispered in shadows. They're echoing across the world. More people than ever are awakening to the possibility that we have forgotten something vital, not just about history, but about ourselves, that we are more than we've been told, that our ancestors were not primitives crawling toward modernity, but caretakers of knowledge we can barely comprehend, that buried in the sands of Egypt and in the stones of Giza is not just a relic of the past, but a mirror, a reflection of who we once were and who we could be again. The Great Pyramid, whether tomb or transmitter, calendar or capacitor, stands as an invitation to look deeper, to ask more, to reject easy answers, and to embrace the vast, uncomfortable possibility that human history is not a straight line, but a spiral. And we, the inheritors of this forgotten wisdom, are not at the end of that spiral. We are simply at the beginning, again. The pyramid is not just the past. It is the future waiting to be remembered. Thanks for spending another quiet night with Boring Mysteries. These long, gentle stories are here to help you drift off while uncovering the world's most forgotten and overlooked enigmas. Slowly, softly, and without urgency. As the mysteries unfold and your eyes grow heavier, just remember, not every secret needs to be solved wide awake. Sleep well, and we'll be waiting with more boring mysteries next time.